you're strumming or picking on the acoustic guitar, one of the great things is to be able to create a more interesting bass line that maybe even has its own journey that's slightly independent from the chords above it. And one of the big elements of that is something called passing bass notes. These are extra notes that we can add to create a more smooth or more interesting bass line. I'm going to take as a case study here Rod Stewart's version of I Don't Want to Talk About It. I've done a video on that. And this isn't specific, nothing we're doing here is specific to this song, but it is riddled with opportunities for various kinds of passing bass notes. In fact, some of them occur in the original recording, many of them appear in the bass guitar line, and one of the things we often want to do is to create more of a feeling of the original by incorporating elements from other instruments. So let's get on, and straight away, and I've got the capo on the 3rd fret, I should mention, just because that's the same key as the original, but that's entirely up to you. Let's look at the beginning of the chorus. We've got a bar of C, a bar of D7, a bar of G, and a bar of E minor. And so we get this. I don't wanna talk about it, how you broke my heart. And I want to focus on the transition between the G and the E minor. How you broke my heart. And it's for this reason. G and E are alphabetically next but one. There's a note between them, E, F, and G. Now, I'm not going to go into the theory, but in fact, in the key of G, the F we want is an F sharp. So E and F sharp and G are notes in the scale that are right next to each other. So I'm going to start with my G. How you broke. And halfway through the bar, I'm going to place a note here. 2nd fret on the bottom string is going to give me an F sharp. And so I've got a G chord, but with an F sharp in the bass. It doesn't sound great, but it's just a passing bass note. And then when we get down to the E minor, it all makes sense. So that's going to sound like this. I don't wanna talk about it, how you broke my heart. You do hear that in the bass guitar on the original, whether you're picking. I don't wanna talk about it, how you broke my heart. And there, if you're picking, you can really bring those notes out with your thumb. And so on, or strumming. How you broke my heart. Doesn't really matter. That's a very good example of a simple passing bass note and just incorporating the missing note of the scale to bring me down from G to E minor. G to E minor, C to A minor. These are really common places where you might want to incorporate a passing bass note. And right after this, we get another bar of C. So, G, how you broke my heart. And if you think about it, E and C are likewise next but one in the alphabet, and the missing note is a D. So I can put a D between the E and the C. The only thing is that I've got to the lowest note of the guitar, that's my E. I can't go down to a D from here. So I'm going to have to come up onto the open 4th string and then to C. So now we're going to have this. I don't wanna talk about it, how you broke my heart. Okay, so that was my open 4th string to C. So we ended up F sharp, E, D, C, which is quite a long sequence of falling notes. They're falling stepwise down to create a smoother bass line. And even if I'm strumming here, you can hear that I'm actually picking those notes out individually with a thumb. How you broke my heart. But if I stay here just a little bit. Okay, we're carrying on. We've got C to D7. And then that repeats. We get this. If I stay here just a little bit longer. If I stay, and so on. So we're actually moving now from D7 to C. And I'm going to create another opportunity for a less obvious passing bass note here. This time, what happens in the bass is this. If I stay here just a little bit longer. Okay, the bass player plays a D and then moves fret by fret down to a C. Now, in fact, D and C are obviously next to each other, neighbouring notes in the alphabet. But we can put in a C sharp, call it D, C sharp, or D flat if you want to C. This is a chromatic passing bass note, and we get this. But if I stay here just a little bit longer, if I stay here, won't you listen? Okay, so that's another example, a third, and again, a different example of a way we can incorporate a passing bass note. Okay, another example. The chorus ends with A-7 for a bar, D7 for a bar, and then 2 bars of G. To my heart, to my heart. So we finish on a G, and the verse kicks off with the same thing, A-7, D7, G. So here's another opportunity, and this time if I finish on my G, I begin my verse with an A-7, G, G sharp, and you can hear that, I think, when the strings come in and he goes, whoa, that bit, there's one of those. So let's have this. To my heart, to my heart. If I stand all alone. There you go. Okay, I mean, there's almost no end to the number of opportunities we've got for passing bass notes in here, and I'm just going to reel off a couple more ideas. In the end of the chorus or in the verse where we've got D7 to G, here's a kind of variation on the idea of a passing bass note. A passing bass note obviously goes stepwise from one chord to another chord to join them together. But here, I'm going to do something slightly different. This is just an approach note. The difference between an approach note and a passing bass note is that an approach note doesn't have to come from anywhere. You'll see what I mean. I've got this bar of A-7. I stand all alone, D7. Shadow hide the colours of my heart. And I'm interested here in getting from D7 to G. What I'm going to do is, as I finish the D7 bar, I'm going to bring my thumb over to the 2nd fret of the bottom string for that F sharp again, this time to move up to the G. As I say, that F sharp just kind of comes out of the blue. It doesn't come from somewhere. Okay, but again, that provides a bit more interest in the bass and a smoother transition. So that would be stand all alone while the shadows hide the colours of my heart, blue for the tears. Okay, so that's now an approach note. You can just have an approach note that comes from below or above, just to help you move on to the next bass note. Okay, something a bit more fancy. The verse ends on 2 bars of G and the chorus kicks off with C. And if we think about it, G, A, B, C, they're more than a third apart. They are 1, 2, 3, 4. They're a fourth apart, but we can still do something here. We just need to incorporate another note. G is here, A, open 5th string, B, 2nd fret on the 5th string, takes us up to our C. So all we need to do, if we want to play one note per beat, which we do just to give us our solid bass line, we need to work out when we need to start that change, how we climb up from G. We get a bar of 4 beats of G, thank you Pickle, then we get 2 more beats of G, 1, 2, 3rd beat is going to be A, 4th beat is going to be B. So we would get this. As stars in the sky, they'll mean nothing to you, they're a mirror. Here's the 2nd bar now, and it's 1, 2, A, B. Bringing us into the chorus. Mean nothing to you, they're a mirror. And I can just play those underneath the G. I don't wanna minor. So that works pretty well. That's a walk up. Now you get this in folk and country and blues quite a lot. You get walk ups and walk downs. Essentially what we mean is we're extending the idea of a passing bass note to include more than one note of the scale to get us there. And as you can see, there's just a kind of logistical element where you have to work out how many beats you're going to need for the number of notes you need to play. That's easy enough. And there aren't too many of those kind of things. You're going to move either a fourth or a fifth generally if you're going to do that. And there are some fairly easy patterns that will help you work that out. All right, but we can do better. Have a look at this. If I play the G, the final G before moving up to my walk up, with the open second string. When I then play the A, I'm going to play a note on the first fret of the second string as well. So G with the open second string, A, first fret on the second string, B, third fret on the second string. I'm playing that with my little finger, because C with the open top string. And I've got this kind of melody at the top of the chord that echoes or mirrors, if you like, what the bass line is doing. They harmonise. They're an octave and a third apart as it happens. So we would get this kind of thing. And the stars in the sky don't mean nothing to you. They're a mirror. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it's great. They're a mirror. I don't wanna talk about it, how you broke my heart. If I stay here just a little bit longer, if I stay here, won't you listen to my heart, to my heart. And so on and so on. So we've got loads and loads of things there. You could kind of overdo it, I guess. You can be a bit overzealous with this and you'll end up with something that's maybe a bit more complicated than it needs to be. But this is a very common way of incorporating just a more interesting bass line. And I want to move on to one more aspect of this, which doesn't happen in this song, but I'm going to take the example of G to E minor to show you something else you can do. So here it is. To remember, we've got G to E minor, passing bass note is F sharp. And so far what we've got is G, then G over F sharp to E minor. And remember that chord sounds a bit rank, doesn't it? It's part of the good power of this is that you're creating some kind of dissonance. G over F sharp's just a horrible sound. But then you resolve onto the E minor, so you get this tension and resolution. So that's not a bad thing to have. But once we've identified a passing bass note, we can actually harmonise that with a chord above it that makes a bit more sense. So what chord, locally to the key of G, contains an F sharp? Well, there are several of them. D is a good example. So there, I'm playing a D chord. I'll do that with my thumb. Play a whole D chord and put a thumb in the bass, second fret of the bottom string. How you broke my heart. Now obviously that's not original to the song. That might be a different song. You might be writing a song. That makes a lot of sense though, to include a chord that actually contains an F sharp. What about another chord in the key? Well, B minor contains an F sharp. So G, B minor with F sharp in the bass. That's the Beatles, A Day in the Life, isn't it? I read the news today, oh boy. I think that's exactly what that does. G, B minor with F sharp in the bass going down to E minor. Okay, I mean, there's lots of things you can do there. One more really nice example would be a chord that's outside of the key. If you know about secondary dominance, you may do E minor. Chord 5 of E minor is B7. So if we stick a B7 in there, which happens to contain an F sharp, that's going to move us very powerfully down from G to E minor. Once I led the life of a millionaire. That's exactly what happens in that song. You have G, B7, put an F sharp in the bass, down to E minor. You could of course play your B7 here and then move a finger across the second fret. Once I led the life of a millionaire. In fact, I think in that song it goes to an E7, but you get the idea. Okay, so passing bass notes. Lots of opportunities. The standard thing to do is where you identify two chords a third apart, stick the note in that comes between them in the alphabet, bearing in mind what key you're in, whether it's an F or an F sharp or a B flat or whatever. You can play chromatic passing bass notes up and down. You can play approach notes that seem to come from nowhere but that move stepwise down or up to your target chord. We've had some walk-ups. You'll find some walk-downs that work in a very similar way. We harmonized our walk-up. And finally, we looked at some ways to harmonize the passing bass notes themselves.